Unacademy. Let's crack it.
So students, first of all, I welcome you all to this session where I am going to discuss the questions which have appeared today in civil service preliminary examination concerned with Indian economy. Now first of all, if we see that the level of difficulty of the questions this year has been a notch above the level of difficulty last year. But largely yes, most of the questions can still be easily cracked with little analysis, and I am going to analyze the questions for you. Rather, first of all, let us start with this. Question number 4. First of all, I am starting with this question number 4. It says, consider the following statements: other things remaining equal or remaining unchanged, market demand for a good might increase. Now here, first of all, if you see what happens, that there is a principle in economics that if a good's quality is inferior and your income rises, then you tend to purchase goods of better quality and not of inferior quality. That means if you look at it, the good is an inferior good and income of the consumers increase. That means if the income of the consumers increase, they would not prefer to buy goods of inferior quality. That means option 3 is totally out, and in that case we are left with only one option, that is 1 and 4. So it is based on that basic principle of economy that if any good is of inferior quality and your income increases, then definitely you like to buy a good which is of higher quality, something better, right, not something inferior. Even otherwise, you can see the first option, the price of its substitute increases. So if the price of the substitute increases, naturally people tend to pay more for the other thing which was earlier original, right. And the price of its complement increases. Now if the price of the complement increases, then naturally people tend to feel that complement itna महंगा है, so why to purchase this? So naturally, I mean, the price of the complement increases, price of the thing may not increase that way. So obviously here, A, first option is correct option. Second option, let me use this so that we can make out here. First option is correct option, right? And second option, that the price of its complement increases, this of course is not correct option, correct choice. The good is an inferior good and in the income of the consumer increases, obviously I already explained to you, and its price falls. If the price falls, naturally there is a tendency to buy more. So obviously here, A is the correct choice in this. Then as you can make out here, Indian government bond yields are influenced by which of the following? Now about this question, let me first of all tell you that the yield of the bond basically means what returns it will give you. Any bond, what returns it will give you. And any bond is likely to, government can fix what returns at the time of issuing a bond. Government will, if it is a government bond, government will decide what should be the yield or percentage at which it will be eventually redeemed, or at which the rate, annual rate of interest which would be paid to those who buy that bond. So as we can see here that Indian government bond yields are influenced, means any bond yield for that matter, they are influenced not only by domestic monetary policies but also by international monetary policies. Because as it happens that internationally, if there are fluctuations in the monetary policy of different countries, and if these countries have a bearing on our financial system, then definitely that is going to have some impact on our financial system as well. And that is going to have an impact on the expected yield also. That means that if Fed, for example, the Reserve Bank of India in our case, but in United States of America, this is the Fed or the federal government, Federal Bank of America, we call that. Federal Bank, it changes its interest rate, it increases or reduces the interest rate, then definitely like international capital investment pattern would change, and that in turn would cause impact on the monetary scenario of different countries. Therefore, actions of the United States Federal Reserve, it comes under global influence, and global influence is certainly going to impact the yield of government bond. Actions of the RBI, definitely that is going to have an impact, because RBI's fiscal policies and RBI's repo rate or reverse repo rate and monetary policy decisions, they are going to have an impact on this, and the inflation definitely has an impact on the yield. So definitely here would rather say question number 6, we are all the three are going to all the three would be the correct option here. Now that I am going to discuss question number 8, consider the following statement: the effect of devaluation of a currency. So there are two things about currency. One is called depreciation, another is devaluation. Devaluation means purposefully we are lowering the value of our currency in order to boost our exports. So whenever government wants to boost exports, it normally goes for devaluation. Devaluation has multiple benefits, but one of the benefits is that there is export promotion, and once the export promotion is there, that means exporters will have more of competitiveness of their product. That means it will improve the competitiveness of the domestic exports in foreign markets, right? And increase in the and at the last option, improves the value trade. The second option, second statement, increases the foreign value of the domestic currency. It actually reduces the value of the domestic currency, and it doesn't increase that. And improves the trade balance. It is not necessary that devaluation will necessarily increase the trade balance, because of course it will boost export, but at the same time, if the imports also are boosted in equal proportion, then it will not necessarily give rise to a favorable or improved balance of trade situation. Therefore, obviously here would say that question number, we are talking of question number 8. Question number 8, obviously the A is the correct answer here. Because it would improve the competitiveness of the exports in the international market or foreign markets. So here the obvious choice is A, as we can make out. Now students, the next question which I am going to discuss, question number 9, which one of the following effects of creation of black money in India has been the major cause of worry to the government of India? So for the government, basically black money has been a major concern, because it is kind of parallel economy, and parallel economy means government has no hang of that money, right? And even if government knows, since it is not in the books of accounts, obviously government cannot tax it. So parallel economy or the black money's major concern is the loss of revenue to the state exchequer due to evasion of tax. There is this is black money, so people amass black money and they do not declare that as their income, and government loses on revenue on account of that. So here the correct choice is D. Now the next question I am going to discuss, which one of the following is likely to be the most inflationary in its effect. Now you see that I am talking about question number 10 now. question number 10. So here, first of all, we should understand all the options given here. Repayment of public debt. If the government is making repayment of public debt, that means large quantities of borrowings which had earlier been there, in large quantity repayment of that borrowing is there. That in turn would rather in a way reduce the money supply, and therefore that is not going to be the option here. Borrowing from the public to finance a budget deficit, that means it will also amount to mopping up the capital from public, so it will also not be the right option. Borrowing from the banks to finance a budget deficit, it is amounting the same thing basically. Both of them, B as well as C, will have more or less the same impact. But here creation of new money, that is in the form of deficit financing, we call that. Deficit financing means that government would create print new currency or a new form of money. So creation of new money to finance budget deficit is definitely like to have greater impact on inflation. So the most inflationary here out of the given options would be option D. Then let us discuss the next question, that is question number 11. Question number 11, now I am talking about money multiplier. The money multiplier in any economy increases with which one of the following? Now, money multiplier, first of all, what is money multiplier that you should know? Money multiplier is basically the ratio of commercial bank money to that of the central bank. So, whatever is the money held by the commercial banks, if we take the ratio of that with that of the money held by the central bank, that gives us an idea about the money multiplier. Now, money multiplier, as we can see that if there is an increase in the CRR, that in turn will reduce the cash or the money held by commercial banks. So, obviously, this would have an opposite effect. Increase in the statutory liquidity ratio or increase in the statutory liquidity ratio would also not have that effect, because a statutory liquidity ratio or cash reserve ratio amounting to the same thing, it will give the same effect. So, A can't be the option and B can't be the correct option, whereas increase in the population of the country, that necessarily doesn't mean that they will have banking habits and they will deposit money with the banks. So, obviously, here increase in the banking habit of people, that in turn would have a positive effect on money multiplier, because it is likely to increase, or rather it will increase the money held by the commercial banks to that of the central bank. So, obviously, here increase in banking habit of the people, that would be the correct option. Now come to question number 12. With reference to Indian economy, the demand pull inflation can be caused or increased by which of the following? The demand pull, that means the inflation can be caused a variety of ways. One of the ways in which inflation increases is what is known as the demand pull factors, that if the demand of a particular commodity increases, then its price will also go up. So, that way we have to identify that with reference to our economic system, demand pull inflation will increase on account of what? Now, the first thing is expansionary policies. So, if government is resorting to a sort of increased lending or increased expenditure, in that case there will be expansion of money supply. So, increased lending or increased spending, that will in turn cause more of money supply, and more of money supply means that it will create demand pull situation. So, obviously, expansionary policy, that is one of them. Fiscal stimulus is also like if government cuts down on taxes and provides some kind of fiscal incentive to people, or increase in the rate of growth of public debt, if that is also one of the fiscal measures as a stimulus, fiscal stimulus. So obviously expansionary policy and fiscal stimulus, both will be the factors here. Inflation indexing wages basically means that the wages are related to, correlated to inflation. If the inflation is going up and wages are also going up, so that will nullify the impact basically. That as the inflation is rising, the wages are also rising in that same proportion. So eventually its impact will not be there on inflation as such. And then therefore this cannot be the correct statement here. Higher purchasing power, definitely if people have higher purchasing power, that is likely to result in inflationary demand pull inflation or inflationary pressure. Rising interest rate will not do that, because if the interest rates are rising, then people tend to deposit more money with the banks, right, and that will in turn reduce the money supply. So that will not result in demand pull inflation. So demand pull inflation therefore necessarily would mean that here 1, 2 and 4, that would be the correct option. So here, as I can mark here, 1, 2 and 4 would be the right choice. Now after this, come to question number 13. Question number 13, with reference to India, consider the following statements. Now here, this is an interesting question, as we can make out. This question, with reference to India, consider the following statement. Retail investors through demat account can invest in treasury bills and Government of India debt bonds in primary market. Now of late, so yeah, we are talking of question number 13. Here now of late, even small investors can invest, the retail investors through demat account can invest in treasury bills, right. As the reform, financial reform is an ongoing process, and in that process the government is trying to open up the economy to the extent possible, so that all the benefits, economic benefits of the system, they reach maximum number of people, right. It is a democratization of the economic reforms, basically is a long drawn out process. So in that process, continuation of that process, now the retail investors can also through demat or dematerialized accounts invest in treasury bills and Government of India debt bonds in primary market. Then there is a new platform which has been created by RBI, that is negotiated dealing system, it is called order matching. It's a government securities trading platform of the Reserve Bank of India. So in that same direction, one can correlate 1 and 2, negotiated dealing system and order matching is a government securities trading platform. So obviously 1 is correct and 2 is also correct here. Central Depository Services Limited is jointly promoted by the RBI and the Bombay Stock Exchange. So as we know, the Central Depository Services Limited is actually jointly promoted by the Bombay Stock Exchange and banks like SBI and the other banks. So here RBI is not involved. So 1 and 2, that means we will have the B as the correct option here. 1 and 2 would be the right, that means B would be the correct option, because the statement 3 is not correct. Here instead of Reserve Bank of India, the other banks, the SBI and other banks would come in play. So this 1 and 2 of course are true. That means option B is the correct option here. Now I'll briefly discuss, because we are going to have a long session, special class in the evening, and there of course I will explain to you all the questions in details with all the relevant references and all that. But as of now, briefly, just in order to acquaint you that what is all has happened in the paper today and what all questions we have actually seen. But of course, if you see the trend for Indian economy is this year number of questions, 15 questions we have got this year, and If you see the trend, of course, last 3-4 years, number of questions has been varying, and number of questions over the years, it has rather been, so to say, 15 to 30 questions. Sometimes, up to it has been up to 29-30 questions also from Indian economy. But this year we are having only 15 questions. So that way, what we find that Indian economy continues to dominate the paper. 15 questions mean 15% is scored from Indian economy alone. So it continues to dominate the situation in the paper, and therefore your emphasis on the Indian economy has to be, so to say, a very focused one. The strategy, as far as the strategy is concerned, I can tell you that the best strategy to prepare for Indian economy is that you have to yourself keep in touch with the latest developments, because as you can make out here, most of the questions they have been derived from the recent happenings. If the RBI has created a platform for trading of securities, and particularly the government securities, then they have inserted a question on that. Inflation is often talked about, what all factors they decide the inflation, whether it is demand pull inflation or the other forms of inflation, or due to other factors. So you should focus rather more on those Economic Times articles or Hindu articles which are talking about the economic policies of the government and recent changes in the economic policies of the government. You see that I cracked the IAS examinations several years ago, and I have been into this IAS mentoring for almost more than 2 decades now. And with my experience, I can tell you that, and if you see one of my videos, recent videos, I had already predicted most of the questions there. And of course, they are not directly as such from that video, but you can see indirectly all the questions will have some correlation or the other, because there also, like I had given current happening based questions, and here, as you find today in the paper, nearly, so to say, more than 10 questions out of 15 questions, they are basically from some current happening in the recent past or the other. So students, what I would advise therefore is that instead of just going through the textbooks, the best strategy to crack preliminary examination as far as economy is concerned, the subject which I am discussing with you right now, is that you should focus more on the current economic happenings, and Economic Times and the Hindu paper, these 2 papers, or you can also see the other papers, of course. I mean, you should not be fussy about, because all of them would be reporting the things, plus PIB website you can see, and from there relevant economic articles, articles concerned with economy that you should see. So जैसे यहाँ अभी जो पेपर में सारे questions आए हैं, उस सारे questions यदि आप उस track को follow कर रहे हैं, तो it would be very easy for you to answer all these questions. But of course, I should very candidly admit that the level of difficulty of this paper is, so to say, 1 notch above what it was last year or last year. Or if you see the papers of last 2-3 years, right, it has been 1 notch above. Some questions, they require you state of the art knowledge. I mean, the current happenings should be perfect. यदि उसमें आपने करंट हैपनिंग्स की तरफ ध्यान नहीं दिया और केवल टेक्स्ट बुक का स्टडी किया है, तो उससे आप ये क्वेश्चंस आंसर पूरी तरह से नहीं कर पाओगे. आई मीन एटलीस्ट 4 to 5 questions in the present today's paper that you will not be able to answer if you rely entirely on the textbook, right? So what I'm saying is that the best strategy to prepare for IAS examination now, right, as I'm telling you this strategy from this Unacademy platform, which is now the most happening place in the country, and the best educators in the country are now associated with Unacademy. So what I'm saying is that you should make it a point to remember that you have to necessarily look into current issues on economy and other subjects also. Like most of the other subjects, of course, there will be a detailed analysis of all the subjects now in the evening, and we are going to conduct special classes on that. And there I will show you, as far as my subject is concerned, economy, that how these questions have actually come about, and what is the best way to understand and answer these questions, so that in the minimum possible time you will be able to answer these questions, almost all the questions, right. Now in the evening I will give you a detailed analysis where I cover each and every question, right. But here now I am going to talk about this water credit is the new buzzword because water credit is something, if poor people are not having access to drinking water, they don't have access to water for sanitation, then what should they do? Government provides subsidy, but that subsidy is not sufficient for these people to actually meet their water requirement. And water crisis is looming large. We know that water table is also going down, underground water table is going down, and in several smaller cities as well as larger cities, water crisis is already simmering to a big extent. And at the same time, you'll find that water crisis for the poor people is getting more and more intense with the passage of time. तो वाटर क्राइसिस पे कुछ न कुछ क्वेश्चन तो वैसे इकोनॉमी में हमेशा एक्सपेक्टेड रहता है, बट दिस ईयर वी वर एक्सपेक्टिंग अ क्वेश्चन ऑन वाटर क्राइसिस इन दिस इन सम फॉर्म और द अदर. अब जिस फॉर्म में ये क्वेश्चन आया है वो क्वेश्चन ये है, वाटर क्रेडिट के ऊपर क्वेश्चन आया है. तो वाटर क्रेडिट जो है वो बेसिकली वही चीज़ है कि पुअर पीपल को यदि स्मॉल क्रेडिट्स आर प्रोवाइडेड, दे आर प्रोवाइडेड विथ स्मॉल फंड्स, so that they can overcome their water scarcity problem, and they can have access to water for their own hygiene and sanitation, as well as for drinking and other purposes, is a great, and this idea question primarily is projecting that idea. So if you had read some article about, easily answer this question, as it can in the water and sanitation sector. So in the water and sanitation sector, microfinance, if small amounts of loans are provided to farmers and a small amount of loans are provided to poor people who are not able to afford safe, clean drinking water and water for sanitation, then obviously this is one of the basic purpose of water credits. Then it is a global initiative launched under the aegis of the World Health Organization and World Bank. It has so far not acquired that ramification. Actually, it is just a budding idea as of now, and therefore it is not sponsored by World Bank or. So it aims to enable poor people to meet their water needs without depending on subsidies. Obviously, that is the idea. That they don't have to bank only on subsidies, and even otherwise subsidies. We know that. Through subsidies, we cannot completely solve the problem. There will always be, gaps in solving that particular problem if we rely only on subsidies. So here the idea is that going beyond subsidies and aiming to enable the poor people so that they are able to meet their water needs without depending only on subsidies. Therefore, obviously here, out of the three statements given, 1 and 3, these two statements are correct, and so C would be the right option for this. Then come to the last question, question number 15. I want to discuss with you that too. Question number 15. So I discussed briefly the strategy part, that what should be the right strategy, and I also discussed that if you see the trend in the past also, you see UPSC trend on subjects, more or less there is a constancy in that. What is that constancy? There are two factors of constancy in that. Number one, the general emphasis on subject has been on fundamental ideas. If you are clear about the fundamental ideas of the subject, may it be economy or history or polity or geography, right? Fundamental ideas means the basic concepts, if they are clear, right? Then you can easily make out even in the examination hall, if you have not seen that particular exact article or that particular exact topic earlier, you can still make out the correct answer in the examination. If you have got correct fundamental idea that inflation is a result of the factors which what all economic factors cause inflation, and what all economic factors they are the demand pull factor, and what is yield of a particular bond, and how is the yield affected. Yield is affected not merely by the the national monetary policy, but it is also affected by global changes, right, in monetary policy, as though that particular question has come here today. So what I am saying is that if you have a good grasp of the fundamental ideas, that is number one thing. Number two, and more importantly, which I already discussed that as a part of strategy with you, is that you have to keep a tab on the current happenings of that particular subject. So nowadays, increasingly, because as an IAS officer, even after your selection as an IAS officer, you will have to keep a tab on current happenings, because as a person occupying a key position in government, obviously you will need to write big notes on files which are concerned with the policy formulation of the government or policy implementation of the government, and that will necessarily require you to have up to date knowledge of the current happenings around you. So students, what I am saying is that one aspect is very important. Two important things, two important underlying ideas जो आज मैंने आपसे डिस्कस किए हैं, इसको यदि आप ध्यान में रखोगे तो आप इजीली प्रीलिम्स भी, मेंस भी और इसके बाद में इवन इंटरव्यू भी, राइट, you can easily go through all these stages and finally get selected. But the only condition for that, as I said, that you have to keep these two particular aspects in mind all the time, so that there is no deviation from the main course of strategy. Other things you can always build on it कि मुझे पढ़ाई कैसे करनी है या उसको किस तरह से डेवलप करना है, नोट्स कैसे बनाने हैं, कितना टाइम किस सब्जेक्ट को देना है, वो सारे एस्पेक्ट्स फिर जो है वो सेकेंडरी एस्पेक्ट्स है. प्राइमरी एस्पेक्ट पे ये दो चीज़ें जो मैंने आपको बताई है, राइट, दैट यू हैव टू टेक नोट ऑफ. नाउ स्टूडेंट्स, व्हाट आई एम सेइंग, आई एम गोइंग टू डिस्कस दिस क्वेश्चन नंबर 15 as well. Before, of course, in the evening, I'm going to give you the complete analysis of these questions, all the 15 questions from Indian economy. But now in India, the central bank's function as a lender of last resort is usually referring to what? The lender of last resort basically means that if a commercial bank has nothing else to resort to, and it is in crisis situation and it is in great need of liquidity. So in that case, what the bank would do? So in that case, it has to resort to the RBI, that is the Reserve Bank of India, as a lender of last resort. So here, obviously, you see that this is the basic idea, lender of last resort. So RBI is the lender of last resort for those banks which are in crisis and they are in need of liquidity. Therefore, providing liquidity to the banks having a temporary crisis. So they overcome the crisis and of course subsequently they have to repay what they have borrowed from the Reserve Bank. So we have number of mechanisms for that. I mean, so what I'm saying is that here, second statement, the first statement, lending to trade and industry bodies, of course that is not the connotation of the question, which is asking that lender of the last resort. So lender of the last resort का मतलब होता है providing liquidity to the banks having a temporary crisis. और lending, जहाँ तक गवर्नमेंट को lending का सवाल है फाइनेंस करने के लिए बजटरी डेफिसिट को, तो वहाँ पे वो इट इज़ नॉट द लेंडर ऑफ द लास्ट रिजोर्ट, वो तो एक उसका ऑनगोइंग फंक्शन है आरबीआई का, दैट ऑफ कोर्स आरबीआई एंड इन टेंडम विद द गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसी they have to find the solution of the fiscal issues, may it be the fiscal deficit or may it be budgetary deficit or anything concerned with the fiscal policy of the government, right? Fiscal policy of the Reserve Bank of India and the fiscal issues of the government. So they have to work together in tandem and find the solutions of those things. So here again, this question is also based on fundamental concept. So here it will be providing liquidity to the banks having a temporary crisis. Therefore, option B, that is second statement. That would be the right answer. So what I'm saying, students, now I have briefly discussed most of these questions which have appeared in the paper today, and we are also going to have a detailed analysis of that in a special class, which of course I'd be conducting that special class immediately after the lunch, the timing of which would be announced to you, and so you don't miss out on that. There definitely we are going to talk about now. This one slide I wanted to show you that if we talk of economy, economy, here you can see that number of questions 29, 25, 28, 23. So in the previous years, economy used to dominate the scene to a great extent. But here this year, number of questions we have got from the economy is primarily focused on current issues. As current issues are here, we got the 15 questions this year. But if you see all the previous years, the number of questions has been rather on the much higher side, almost so to say initially in vicinity of 29, 30, that is 29, and then 25, 28, 23, and now. That doesn't mean, don't mistake this trend to mean that next year you are going to have less number of questions or even less than 15. No, it's not like that. economy is one solid area on which you have to have firm foundations, and a number of questions here. The trend, of course, the only thing we should understand is that in this analysis there is greater emphasis on current happenings, and most of the questions are current happening based questions and the questions which are based on fundamental concepts and ideas of Indian economy. So, students, again now in the evening I am going to have a special class, and there of course I am going to explain in details about all these questions which have appeared today, and also the remaining part, whatever is remaining, that also I am going to discuss with you. In the meantime, I wish you all the very best.